Okay, so so this is 2:16 p.m. And I'm doing a Bible study. Let's see here. Just looking through the options on chat. I think before there was an option to have only people commenting that are subscribed or something like that, like a minute after subscription. And there's one person there. Okay. Anyway, so I'm doing the SDA Bible study in the Crucible of Christ, and it mentions to read 1 Peter 4:12 to 19, 1 Peter 5:8 to 11, Romans 1:21 to 32, Jeremiah 9:7 to 16, 2 Corinthians 12:7 to 10. So I'm not sure how I'm doing this exactly yet. I can just jump into it. I'm sure there's some stuff I want to mention, but I'll think about what I plan to do, I guess, later. It's all laid out as far as the study goes, but it's specific to my channel. I don't know if there's anything that I would. Oh, no one's there again. Anyway, okay. So the week at a glance. What are the causes? Oh yeah. So just a little intro. So this is a study that you can do daily, from Saturday to Friday, and I'm just doing it all in one sweep kind of thing. Yeah, I like to do it all at the same time if I can, or before the week is over. So the week at a glance. What are the causes of the difficult times that we experience through our lives? So I have choices away from salvation. So when people choose to, well, yeah, it's a very layered issue actually, but basically, because there are people and authorities that are supposed to do things they're not doing. So a person is even more distance from salvation. So I guess I can move on from there. So this is the Sunday lesson. So no one's watching. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm not a big channel, but it was interesting that one person was there. Uh, so this is Sunday, July 3rd for this study. Read 1 Peter 4:12 to 19. What is Peter's message? Jesus died for troubles happening then and now. Seek healing for hurt people. Celebrate things are better than they were before Christ, and do not be too surprised. Do not be too surprised when someone helps you to overcome the challenge. When people say Christ as an expiration and you exasperation, and you know they mean bad, and you're feeling hurt, you are knowing the love of God. So when people exclaim Jesus Christ, my test is if they wouldn't say their own name, they're probably saying it in a way that they shouldn't really be saying it. So if someone's like, I don't know what name to use, John Smith, I guess is a common one. If they go, oh, John Smith, but they wouldn't say that, but they would say Jesus Christ, they're probably saying it in a way that's probably, not exactly lovingly. But yeah, so that's what I got from that. That's Peter's message. And maybe I'm reading that from the other question here, because at the bottom of Sunday, Peter was referring to trials that are the consequence of standing up for Christ. But there are also other reasons that trials come. How could 1 Peter 4:12 to 19 help you to explain tactfully to a friend why he or she should not be surprised at the painful trials they might face? So yeah, I kind of squeezed in writing things out. So that whole anyway, the information's there. You can interpret it how you like, and you'll probably have an answer that's different. So that's why this is such an important study, is because you get to actually ask your own or answer the questions and have your own answers. So yeah, for me, I got 1 Peter 4:13. Jesus went through worse to make it easier for others. Let your suffering make it easier for others. People made things badly is what I got from that. So like a person can go on and on and on. Oh, I have this trouble, and maybe they like to just talk about their troubles, but it's the compassionate person that's actually working to alleviate those troubles. I mean, there is the person that just likes to have trouble and not really get help with it. I don't comprehend that person at all. But then there seems to be a society or culture around people who they go, well, we want to help, but then they don't really help. They're just like talking, oh, we want to help, and that's how we help by saying we want to help, and obviously that's not really helpful. So yeah, so that's what I got for that. This is Monday, so read the above text. What's the message for? What's the message there for us? Ask yourself, how seriously do I take these words? What things do you do in your life that show whether you take them seriously? And the message, the text is, be sober, vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about roaring like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's 1 Peter 5:8. So what I got for an answer to what's the message there for us is that Satan seeks your weakness, not to heal. So he's like, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, that's what's wrong? Okay, well, how do we make it worse? Not, or how do we keep it the same, right? It's not actually about making it any better or alleviating at all. It's just to hear that suffering. And yeah, so anyway, ask yourself, how seriously do I take these words? My answer is, be in your walk orderly and self-disciplined. That's in relation to what is the message there. And then as far as the question, ask yourself, how seriously do you take these words? I just put seriously because it is serious. There are people that benefit from other people's pain, illegally, financially. I mean, it's a strange time, but there are people who do care, and God cares. So it's important to have that relation. How should Christians react to Satan's prowling? Be faithful and resist. 1 Peter 5:9. That's where I got. That's what I got. So faithfulness I find it is a mindset. And it's not always completely conscious, because I mean, there's a level of faith when you're driving down the road. People aren't saying a prayer, oh, dear God, please let people drive in their own lane today. There's an expectation, but it is still a chance. Yeah, like this, it's an interesting thing, the whole faithfulness, because of how much people don't even realize they have faith. Even some people who don't believe in God or prayer or anything like that, and they're being, but yet they're still faithful that what they'll be looking for is there to find. So that's interesting. And then the resistance, that's the whole identifying um, what is there to resist. I mean, yeah, so that's what I got for that. What does God promise to do for those who are suffering? What does God promise to do for those suffering? So from 1 Peter 5:10, so Christ shall restore you. And I kind of want to look that one up a little bit and read it specifically, because I remember I did like it a lot, actually. And there's other things mentioned there too, but specifically, it was well, just a nice promise. And it just goes to speak to people who are godly and who's not godly. Um, I might have to end early for now, because I didn't know if there was some sort of interruption coming or not. So I might finish this a little bit later. Yeah, so what are we looking at? We're looking at 1 Peter 5:10. 1 Peter 5:10, and God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Now, anyone in British Columbia might recognize that there's a lacking of will restore you and make you strong, and I don't want to like label them, but there are authorities that are supposed to help restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast, and they're just not doing it, and I don't know why. But it's just not happening. So anyway, think about the other ways that Satan causes pain. How could reading 1 Peter 5 8 to 11 help us to deal with the anguish that we experience because of our fate in living in a sinful world in which Satan wreaks havoc? And I have 1 Peter 5:11. Um, and that's the one that is the part where he says, to him be the power forever and ever. So he has the power forever and ever. So you're constantly having that promise that you are to be made strong, and to be allowed to be made weak is not a sign that people are in the right path. That's my suggestion. So for Tuesday in Romans, in Romans 1:21 to 32, Paul describes the process when people fall into sin and the consequences of those sins. Read these verses prayerfully and carefully and summarize the essence of what Paul is saying, focusing specifically on the stages of sin and its consequences. Be clean, stay clean. They did not glorify God. God gave them over. They did not retain God's knowledge. They maintained wickedness. That's what I got from Romans 1:21 to 32. In your own life, how have you reaped the benefit, the immediate consequences of your own sins? What lessons have you learned? What changes must you make in order to not go through something similar again? So, not eating a body specific diet made my body weak. So, I'm with my body, I need specific nutrients, and I don't have an authority in my life to go, okay, well, let's look at your body and see what you need. And there should be some sort of authority where I can go, hey, I'm having this issue, or I'm fasting and I tried it and it's helped me feel better. I have my black tea today. And when I'm hungry, I drink it. And when I feel like eating, I drink it. It's just interesting because there are times I'm like, oh, I want to make popcorn. Oh, I want to have some seaweed. Oh, I want to make some egg sandwich. And I'm like, no, not till 5 o'clock. I decided for today to break my fast then. And then, so what changes must you make in order to not go through something similar again? Be aware and mindful of all I consume. So whatever I'm putting in my body, I need to be aware, that I'll have pain if I eat something or not have pain if I don't eat something. And I need to figure that out for myself, apparently. Which is kind of funny because we live in a society which has these specialists and educated people and elected people that are supposed to be like, hey, we're here to make things understand about the quote and text above. It is, I shall refine and test if they are refined. So he's like, oh, okay, these people are refined. Are they? Oh, they're exactly the same the way they were. Oh, okay. Turns out they're not so refined. What has been your own experience with the pains involved in the purification process? So before this question I answer, going back, my interpretation or how do I understand the quote and text above? It's the quote and the text. So the text, what I understand is the word can heal when you can be healed. So from the quote, what I got is if you read something and you're like, that hurts me. That's probably something there to unpack or explore, that is something that needs to be healed on the inside. And I think that's true because a person can read something and go, I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, there are things in the Bible a person can read and it does tend to, it just pulls at the heartstrings, as they say, and it's might be something to explore. So anyway, what has been your own experience with the pains involved in the purification process? So how far a society can let a neighbor suffer? It's incredible. It's like these doctors, right? They'll be like, oh, you're young. Oh, you really are concerned about your health. That's great. And then when you get a little older, a couple of decades later, oh, well, you're getting old. Oh, it's just your body. That's just what happens. it just does not seem to be preventative healthcare. And I'm like, from what I was saying previous, like, that's not a good sign. And it's, yeah, so like my own experience with the pains involved is people will just, they're like, well, it's just time to kill them now that they're old and they're in pain. Meanwhile, they've been having these issues since they were, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, just with all these excuses to not look into what can actually help their own body. And it's like, it's yeah, it's shocking. But then that's the thing too, is like, it's interesting not to be surprised. Um, anyway, I'm cross-referencing stuff, and I just find it interesting. Yeah, so real godly people are looking to heal, and then the other ones are looking to hear about the pain and not heal. And I think we all know who that is, because they're the ones going, we want to help, but we're not. It just takes an adult mind to go, okay, they want to help, but they're not. What can we do about that? Because obviously we need to have society, or what? We're going to have dogs be the existing species on Earth that's roaming around, and then people are just gone away because they weren't able to care for themselves. It's a whole thing. It's just very strange. Read Jeremiah 9:7-16. God says that he will refine and test or melt Judah and Jerusalem. What two reasons does God give for this? How Jeremiah 9:13 and 14. How will the refining happen? So they ignored God's divine law and followed wrong people. How will the refining happen? Punishments. That's what I got. I should try to go through this a little quicker. I don't want it to be a long thing. I do want to share what I have to say and hear what other people have to say. And so if I want to build up this channel, I should probably not have it be like a blah, blah, blah thing. Think about the sins that you struggle with. If God were going to refine and test you today, how might he do it? Like, that's a huge question. That's why I like this study. What action could you take now to deal with this before God would need to take drastic steps with you as he did with Israel? So focusing on God's word steadfast. So just really thinking about what God has to say is what I got for the answer to the question. If God were going to refine and test you, how might he do it? I guess I didn't really answer the question of how he would test me. I guess the test may be just actually putting the study out there. So I'm doing that. So I guess I am passing that test. Yeah, so anyway. What action could you take now to deal with this before God would need to take drastic steps with you as he did with Israel? So study the study would be the action. And I am. Okay, so this is Thursday. What do you think Paul meant by given me? Who gave it to him? How was God able to use it for Paul's benefit? So this is the crucibles of maturity. So, and lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. 2 Corinthians 12:7. So I don't really comprehend that completely. Uh, it's a lot of like, anyway, it's just there's like metaphor, thorn in the flesh, and then a messenger of Satan to buffet me. And the word buffet, I think, is like block. Lest is an old English term I'm not really familiar with, but so my answer to these questions, what do you think Paul meant by given me? Who gave it to him? How was God able to use it for Paul's benefit? So a test of kindness was impressed on Paul, and there was none to heal. Who gave it to him? God. And how was God able to use it for Paul's benefit? It showed the nature of people. Yeah, because they would be able to help him. And again, they just stood there as bystanders going, well, it's not my job. It's not my job description. Oh, there's no law there, even though this is something unethical. We need to do something, but no one's doing anything unless we want people to die. It's like that whole summer thing in British Columbia last year where people died in their homes. It's just like they died. There's something that was mentioned about how there was a threshold where the landlord had to do some sort of thing if it was too cold, but if it's too hot, the temperature, well, it wasn't in a law that he had to do anything to react to make the living situation livable, and people died. It's like, we're not in a war, people shouldn't be dying, and then they decide to do something about it. We know temperature and heat. Like, I think that's like in the Bible, like they talk about all kinds of disasters, and we know things get too hot and things get too cold, and other stuff. Read 2 Corinthians 12:7-10. How does Paul deal with his thorn? Do you think that Paul's weakness had any other spiritual benefits for him? How can the way that Paul responds help you to deal with thorns that you may have to carry? So for that first question, he asks for its removal. Do you think Paul's weakness had any other spiritual benefits for him? It was survivable. So he was able to endure and still proceed. And that's all it is, I guess. So how can the way that Paul responds help you to deal with thorns that you may have to carry? So sustain what you can, like in the example of British Columbia with the heat. Maybe a person would be able to have cold showers or something. Who knows, right? Like, survive the heat. But with these people who were vulnerable, it was less optionable. So anyway, in what ways might God's ideas for your spiritual development be very different from your own? Think about areas in your life in which you need to become more fruitful in righteousness. What spiritual qualities would you like to ask God to develop in you through his pruning? So for the first question, what is a form of love that is something someone can do? Think about areas in your life in which you need to become more fruitful in righteousness. So like body healing, self-discipline. I guess is the answer. Self-discipline is the answer to what spiritual qualities would you like to ask God to develop in you through his pruning? More self-discipline. Making appointments, making calls, doing research about who to contact about specific issues. Because there are systems that are designed to help people get through things, and so it should be really accessible and obvious. Like laws should be very easy to comprehend, and it should be something a person can have equal access to. It shouldn't be a secret, like, oh well, here are the laws, but you're not educated enough to know. It should be pretty simple to at least access them, and then the phrasing should be updated. It's all kinds of stuff. And this is Friday now. Discussion questions. 1 Peter 5. Oh, I made a note. 1 Peter 5:10. Discussion questions. It is so. It really can be hard while we are reaping the consequences of our sin. Will I ever be able to be made right with God again? We ask. What promises does God make that can encourage us to persevere through such times and not give up or quit? I would say. I know people use the term give up, but it's like really silly. Are you giving up? How much up are you giving? Or are you simply quitting? Anyway, see what Paul writes later in Romans 5:1-11. What can you say to someone who is asking this very question? So my answers, I have to look up because okay, this one's open to it. 5:10. So 5:10 again. So so will I ever be able to be made right with God again? Because, and as they say, and the God of all grace, and grace as a virtue, which is like virtues for life. That's what I think about is from what grace is. who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. And we all have the spirit of, I don't know how to phrase it, but we all have godliness in our hearts. And we just need to choose it uh, for a prosperous community. Anyway, the point is that he'll make you, yeah, that's like, will I ever be able to be made right with God again? And that just simply describes, yes, he will restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. I mean, it's just so easy. It's simple. What promises does God make that can encourage us to persevere through such times and not quit or give up? Can lead to less sinning, which is a great direction. um, so don't quit on yourself. And anyway, I should move on to number 2 here. What does Ellen G. White mean by his providence? How does this work? How do you know when something happens by God's providence? What acts of God's providence have led to trials in your own life? As a class, discuss what you've learned at this time. How might you help someone else who is wondering whether some event is indeed his providence? And as a class, I know how that goes. So I guess I'm a class of 1, and whoever wants to join in the chat, looks like no one's watching. So anyway, getting it through, and people open up more and go, okay, this is helpful. And even though, like with Noah, right, like he was like, oh, I'm going to make an ark, and people are like, well, that's silly, but then they all drown, right? Like his act of love led him through trials, but he ultimately was the one to reap the benefit of his dedication to the love that he knew was from God. So yeah, as a class, discuss what you've learned at this time. How might you help someone else who is wondering whether some event is indeed his providence? Well, the question is, do you feel loved? I mean, do you feel it's an act of love? And I mean real love, not and the love simply is just, can be just being kind. Or even, it's something to look up, because love as a virtue, as a definition, is not complicated. It's not some unachievable standard. It's simple. So and it can be complicated, but it's a person can figure it out if they're just doing these things. How might you help someone who is wondering whether some event is indeed his providence? Okay, so something else I added is being a witness. Satan does not always want a witness. So if you can witness something happening that's not loving, and you can be there for them, that is a loving act. But yeah, Satan doesn't want witnesses. He doesn't want people noticing the harm he's causing, unless he does for whatever reason. But the point is Satan, and I mean Satan as a wrongdoer. I don't mean anything else in that situation. Just someone who's trying to be sneaky and doesn't, like, oh, don't make eye contact. Some people out in the public, they might be like, oh, that person's staring at me. Oh, even if they're just simply looking over and just like seeing who's where doing what. It's very suspicious that people, adults in the public, would be surprised to see someone looking over. It's a whole phenomenon in itself. It's really strange. So yeah, number 3, if you know someone who is going through a crucible experience right now, does it matter, or should it matter, what brought it on? That is, how should you react to this person and his or her suffering, regardless of what caused it? So my answer is people choosing. It's so squished here. My printing is so small. There's not enough room because it's supposed to be a discussion, right? But anyway, it's good to make notes anyway, but there's not room to really make a lot of notes. Okay, what's the question? So what brought it on? So people choosing. I my printing is so small here and so messy. I can't even make it out very clear. So I'll try to just read it as it is. Oh, so to answer the question, so listen and ask questions. That's the note that I made up over here. And so that is, how should you react to this person up top? Oh man, I want to try to get through this quickly, but a Christian. Well, let's see if this answers the question. A Christian young man living in South America went through a bitter trial. After it was over, he moved to Europe and later commented to someone, "I left my corpse in South America. What does that mean? Why must we all, in a sense, leave our corpse somewhere? What role do trials have in that process?" Oh, okay, so I certainly have an answer to that. So and I did put Romans 12:19 as a reference, so I should at least read that, see how much sense that brings. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord." So, yeah, so it's up to God to avenge, and leave room for God's wrath. That's something for all of us to do, apparently, according to the Bible. And I feel like there's lots of room for God's wrath. um, yeah, people choosing on should be able to identify, oh, I know that wouldn't be great. It's not like I need to go through a drunk parent growing up to know what it's like to have a drunk parent growing up. It's chaotic. There would be like similarities. People can share stories of that, but I mean, a person should be able to identify and relate. Not that they live the experience, but they comprehend that experience is not desirable. Um, so yeah, I guess that's pretty much that. Except for the last question. Oh yeah, the one that I read. There are two more questions. A Christian young man living in South America went through a bitter trial. After it was over, he moved to Europe and later commented to someone, "I left my corpse in South America. What does that mean? Why must we all, in a sense, leave our corpse somewhere? What role do trials have in that process?" So for the first question, I put he probably murdered someone or left old ideologies. Because when someone from South America says, "I left a corpse in South America," I'm like, well, that's a red flag. But in this situation, they probably mean, "I left old ideologies." Um, so why must we all, in a sense, leave our corpse somewhere? So that's like the whole leave our old ideologies, and that is to be renewed, is why we must all, in a sense, leave our corpse somewhere. And what role do trials have in that process? Is it gives direction. It gives room for, okay, I need to do this with my life. I need to go here, do that type of thing. So as a class, plan an outing to a hospital or somewhere where you could be of help, comfort, and cheer to those who, for whatever reason, are in a crucible. So anyway, I guess that's that. So have a good day, decision makers, and thanks for your time.